Welcome to See You on the Other Side, where the world of the mysterious collides with the world of entertainment. A discussion of art, music, movies, spirituality, the weird, and self-discovery. And now, your hosts, musicians and entertainers who have their own weakness for the weird, Mike and Wendy from the band Sunspot.
So here we are today, and we haven't done a podcast. We're all in one room for a while.
It's true. Yeah, we've been using the beautiful internet.
Right, the magic of the magic
virtual
of
rooms.
So we're here from the Sunspot secret lair to do today's podcast, and it's me and Wendy, and you haven't talked to her since the Milwaukee Paranormal Conference, but also joining us today is
Lisa Van Busker.
That's right.
That's right.
Our partner in crime at the Milwaukee Paranormal Convention, which was, I think, episode 37, I want to say. Actually, it was episode 43, and you can find that at othersidepodcast.com/43.
Okay, but you can go back and get catch from the archives so you can see a little bit of that. But no, Lisa's joining us again today, and we're all in the Halloweeny mood because we're just days away from everybody's favorite holiday, Christmas for weirdos.
The high holy days, as I always refer to them as.
Yes, the countdown is on. The countdown to candy and costumes.
And one, don't forget Mischief.
Lots and lots of mischief.
That's right.
And we'll be talking about some of that mischief today. But let's talk a little bit about the Halloweeny stuff we've been up to. Wendy, we were just in Rockford, Illinois.
Yes, we were.
The birthplace of Cheap Trick.
That's right. And you guys might remember a song that we wrote for one of our episodes, which was I Was a Teenage Zombie, and is also the theme song for the Duttersons web series.
Yeah, like a YouTube sitcom.
Yeah, and so we went down there and they filmed a video for the song. The stars of the show were in the video and everything, so we'll look forward to that coming out soon, hopefully.
And on our Facebook and Twitter, you can see, it's facebook.com/sunspotmusic. You can see the pictures of us in the makeup and everything in full color.
Right.
The video is going to be in black and white, but you'll see how... It was like very green.
Oh, yeah, extremely.
It's like how you'd picture...
Frankenstein.
Yeah, like a Frankenstein look. It wasn't the kind of zombie, so if you guys have seen Dawn of the Dead, the zombies are all pretty much blue in that movie. Like they're so blue, they're almost like alien. Like they look like aliens.
Like Smurfs?
Yeah, like Smurf zombies. Like Smurf zombies that'll just eat your brains.
And these were really cute Frankenstein zombies.
Yes, they were. They were more the cute, like the zombies versus...
It's mild.
There's a game on the phone or whatever you can play called Zombies versus Plants.
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm.
And they kind of look like the zombies from Zombies
like
versus
fun
Plants.
little happy zombies.
Yeah, like nobody's like it's not really terrifying. They're fun. They're fun bees.
Right.
We like fun zombies.
Yes. Definitely.
It's a little different. So we'll link to that Duttersons.
Yeah. And that was fun.
It was a lot of fun, actually.
And you guys, the two of you, recently had an adventure.
Oh, yes, we did.
Oh, we did. I almost forgot about that.
Yes, and I haven't really heard too much about it, so maybe you guys can tell a little about what you did.
It was pretty fantastic, I thought.
So why don't you talk about it for a sec, Lisa?
All right, I was going to go anyway, having been raised very Catholic and probably consider myself recovering Catholic. But anytime there's a big event, I will go. So we had a saint here, an 11-year-old girl, Saint Maria Goretti. Mm-hmm. And it was her 125th birthday that she was brought to the church here, and she was out for viewing for 22 hours.
So when you say an 11-year-old girl, and it was her 125th birthday, so what you're saying is that she was not a living 11-year-old girl.
Yeah, she remained 11 years old forever.
Oh, that's so sad.
Let's say, but we had a big birthday bash for her.
Did you bring cake and like
we had to wait
party
to
horns
get
and
in. The line was forever.
So a lot of people were there to view.
13,000 went to see her. I think 13,600.
People bust
which for Madison, that's substantial.
That is a big deal. But the thing is, the church is named Saint Maria Goretti, so it's named after the saint. And she was
her church.
She was sainted in the 1950s, and she died in the early 1900s. There was the next door neighbor or one of the farm workers that worked on their family farm. Mm-hmm. Sexually assaulted and killed her.
Oh my gosh, that's terrible.
That part is terrible. But what happens is why she became a saint is on her deathbed. She said that I forgive him, and I hope that we're together forever in heaven.
Yes, she did.
These are saints.
I'm sorry, I'm just sitting here with a weird expression of confusion?
I share your expression and confusion. When I knew she was coming, I read up on her.
Okay.
Because I'm like, I'm so going to see this.
And it's interesting story.
And then I read it, and the whole part about the grown neighbor assaulting her and killing her made me very angry, which I see in your face right now.
Well, it's disgusting, but
Yeah.
but
and then just for a child to say something so mature and
well, that was the idea. That's she's got a saintly level of forgiveness.
Okay.
In her. And then later on, the attacker, he repented. He said that he had visions of her when he was in prison. Mm-hmm. She came to him, and she had like the number of flowers in her hand with the
14. She was stabbed 14 times. She had 14 white lilies.
And that
See,
was
if I were
symbolic.
her, I would only be hiding and trying to scare him. I wouldn't be showing up with flowers. I'd be...
Well, that's why there's no Saint Wendy, right?
And I hope there never will be.
Thanks.
So the thing, if you guys aren't Catholic, just to kind of let you know, in Catholic you get the Holy Trinity. That's God, JC, Jesus His Son, and the Holy Spirit. That kind of the Holy Spirit is the glue that holds that Trinity together. Now those are the big three, and that it's supposed to be three things in one. So God is still one person, but big God with the beard and like touching the finger at him that you always think about, and Jesus and the Holy Spirit they all represent different faces of the same thing. Saints are people that exhibit really godlike attributes, like forgiveness, like mercy, like performing miracles that humans can't perform. And so you don't pray to saints. You pray to a saint to pray for you.
Okay.
So saints can't grant you, like, people would come up, they pray to the saint, and they hold up like a piece of paper they give you. And just by touching the coffin that the body is in, because she's covered in wax, it's a skeleton covered in wax.
And it's like glass, isn't it? So you can actually...
It's a glass coffin.
Wait,
She's tiny, and I have to say her skeleton is inside this wax figure. But the wax figure is actually very pretty, I thought.
Oh, so it's just...
It's pleasing to look at.
It's like a wax museum. It's not... it's not like the skin and everything is not...
Absolutely. Yeah, it's a pretty wax figure.
Didn't you know that Madame Tussauds, all the wax figures
have the skeletons
underneath? Like, where do you
But some of those people are still alive,
Where do you think famous people...
confused.
Well, you think they're still alive. Where do you think they go?
Oh, man.
Right. So you
Scandal.
If you touch Michael Jackson's wax figure, you can dance.
You've done that, haven't you, Wendy? I heard about your Thriller.
Yeah, that's right. So anyway,
coming up on Saturday.
So it really is a very powerful experience because everyone's very devout. It's
that would be
very
interesting.
serious, and it is very interesting. I found it very moving.
Yes, I agree. Very moving.
And I was telling my mother about it. My mother's a big Catholic.
Oh, she must have been so happy for you.
And she was like, "Oh, that's great." But she said that, now Saint Maria Goretti became a saint in the 50s. So when she was a little girl going to Catholic school in Milwaukee, she would hear these stories about the miracles.
Okay.
So she was kind of in the know when they were deciding whether or not Maria Goretti would be a saint.
Oh, that's cool. So it was like a news topic.
Right. And when they were talking about it, it was terrifying to her because she was the little girl and she just kept on imagining being stabbed, 14 times.
That's so sad.
So, but no, people pray to the saint and they pray that the saint will pray to them for healing. Mm-hmm. And then the idea is that God gives the saint like special attention. Like, okay, Maria, I'll do a favor for you because you forgave your attacker or whatever.
She's a trustworthy, so it's like you want her on your side.
Right.
Trying to lobby for her.
You pray, just like people wear the St. Christopher medal and St. Christopher, the patron saint of travelers. Mm-hmm. He's supposed to pray to God. You pray to him to pray to God to kind of, he's like the intermediator.
Yeah.
He can't do things for you, but he knows a guy.
He can amplify.
He's your guy. The saints are, hey, I got a guy.
The middleman.
You got a problem? I got a guy.
Talk to me, and I'll talk to the big guy. Or the big girl. We don't know who it is. So
the big presence.
The big presence in the sky. So either way, it was a pretty fun thing to do.
It was, and like all good events at a Catholic church, we had to go get alcohol afterwards.
Yeah, it's true. That's true. Sister,
you had to. I mean, it was like it would be disrespectful of the church not to.
Since there wasn't communion, we had to go to La Tigre afterwards.
Nice.
You know how it goes.
Place. That's great.
I loved it too.
But all right. So that was just a little bit of interesting kind of. And it's not a cult because it's Christian, but it's certainly mystical.
Definitely.
Kind of thing that we did. And that was fun.
Very cool.
So, all right. Enough chit chat. On the topic for this week.
That's right. This week is a big week.
It is a big week. Number one, because Halloween is this weekend.
That's right. And it's on the weekend, which is extra trouble,
Right.
especially in Madison, where people like to get rowdy.
And it's also extra trouble because it's daylight savings time. So the bars are open another hour.
Yes, we need that extra hour.
Yeah. So watch yourselves as you go out. Because if you usually pace yourself to 2 o'clock, if you reach a certain point and go to 3, I mean,
Oh no, we've been
right,
there. We don't.
We've
want
been
to
there
talk
as
about that.
a
It's
band.
Not
we've
cool.
had to perform a lot of nights on daylight savings times, and everybody paces themselves for bar time at 2 o'clock.
Right.
But if you don't pace yourself, and all of a sudden there's another hour, just think about that before you go out. Check your watch. Okay.
Yes.
And
But it's also another night is this week. One that isn't commonly talked about.
Depends where you're from.
it does
That's
depend where you're
right.
from.
And what night is that?
It would be Devil's Night
That's right. And it's special for Lisa.
because it's also my
She
birthday.
was born on Devil's Night.
Lisa-
in Detroit.
In Detroit, the
So-
spiritual home of Devil's Night. We should
So,
say.
like, if this were the state fair, then you'd be the state fair, the Dairy Queen, or what's the?
We don't do dairy
You'd
in
be the- I mean-
Detroit.
right,
No, but I'm making the Wisconsin. You'd be the Devil's Night.
the Cornhusker Queen or the
I will be I am the
not
queen.
the Dairy Queen.
Alice in Dairyland.
Alice in Dairyland.
So you'd
I
be
was gonna
like
say the Blizzard
Alice
Queen.
in Devilland or something.
I'll be Alice in Devilland. I will be the queen of the devils.
Ice cream cakes for all.
All this kind of that weird time. Okay.
But right, she is the May Queen
Yes.
in October, and so I mean, devil. If you guys don't know what it is, you know, in the United States we have a custom when kids go out, they trick or treat for candy. They dress up in costumes, and we talked a lot about this last year when we talked about how autumn was the traditional to especially to pagan and Wiccan cultures. I mean, I guess Wiccan is a modern name for older pagan cultures, but pagan, it was the thinning of the veil between the other world and this world, and that's why you had to dress up. So when the monsters came out, they didn't know, you know, like, oh, hey, buddy, you know, it wasn't like, hey, it's a human, let's mess with him. It was like, hey, check this guy out. He's one of us. So when kids dress up and they go door to door, they say trick or treat. Now we don't do a lot of tricks anymore because most people just give us
Most people are boring.
right. Well, and you know,
I
and
want to trick some kids this time.
right.
I always trick them on
Do you?
Halloween.
For one of those.
Oh yes, I am.
Well, the thing is that. I mean, there's always the good houses to go for trick or treat where there'd be like full size candy bars. You'd be like, oh, full size candy bars. Like, I love you.
Or some people would give you $1. That was my favorite.
I love those.
I'll just take the cash, please.
Did you guys have a dentist in your neighborhood?
Yes.
Yeah, the dentist would
Give you an apple or something.
No, you get a toothbrush.
Oh,
Here's
no. That's a trick.
I always had a dentist in my neighborhood and an Avon lady who'd give you a candy and then give you a little piece of makeup, and she'd go, and this is for your mother.
Oh, isn't she smart?
That's clever.
Yeah.
But I always despised when people gave us apples or oranges. I'm like, why would I want this?
Right, I can get
Come
this
on.
anytime. Like, you know, my mom isn't gonna buy me a whatchamacallit
Right.
every day.
Or Twix.
Well, see, back in Detroit when I was growing up, we didn't get fruit because there was a little string of people putting razor blades in them.
Well,
oh,
yeah,
that's
and-
nasty.
So all you could get was wrapped candy.
Yeah, and that my mother would always go through.
Inspect.
You know, my mother comes up on this podcast all the time, but she
She is a very popular topic.
she'd love to read horror stories, not like Edgar Allan Poe, but like whatever was in the news. So when you talk about razor blades and pins and
so
everything in candy,
nonfiction.
she would she's a voracious newspaper reader. So whatever story would happen, it could be something like 30 years. She'd be like, in the late 80s, we had to worry about children's Tylenol if it wasn't in a gel tab. People were poisoned by that, you know. And you just, you know, it'd be little, and so she would remember all of that. So she'd check the candy. If it wasn't wrapped, it would go in the trash.
Yeah. Well, that's
If it wasn't wrapped, it would go in the trash.
that's good diligence, I think.
No, it's prudent, but
It
I'm
could be- it
seeing
could have
good
bacteria.
candy go in the trash. I'm freaking out. a
You
little
probably didn't need that extra piece or two. I'm
Right.
sure.
bit. No, when you think about that, now think about doing that now. Like we're all
I know.
adults, but think about just having a gigantic bag of candy and just eating it in one night or 1 to 2 days.
Gosh.
Like
No, not me, man. I rationed that off.
when I have like half a bag of M&Ms, people look at me like, "What are you?
Pig.
Are you gonna share those?" I'm like, when I was a kid, is all we did.
I know. It's pretty crazy. It's a lot of A lot of sugar.
So the thing is, there's trick or treat, and the treat part is what most people focus on. But on October 30th, there's a tradition of the tricks part. Did you guys ever do a trick on Devil's Night on October 30th?
No.
Oh my goodness! Of course I did.
Oh, see, that's
Okay.
why we have Lisa here.
Okay, Lisa, what was your first one?
The only thing I was thinking about this when I was born on Devil's Night, of course, and I will be 50. So Devil's Night in Detroit started about the same time I did in Detroit.
Whoa, coincidence?
Okay, sure.
Yeah.
Coincidence?
not.
She was
I
like a
think
little
not.
baby. She was out there like tossing pumpkins at people's houses. And
Lighting fires.
But when I was growing up and not maybe 10 or 8, back then when you're like 10 or 8, you could run around the neighborhood unsupervised.
yeah.
And we would go out on Devil's Night from, we'll say like junior high, in the high school, escalated maybe a little bit, but I remember soaping windows on cars. You'd go out with a bar of soap.
Naughty.
Oh, and I remember ringing the doorbell and running, playing
Oh, ding dong ditch.
Ding dong ditch.
Ironically, we did it to our neighbors we liked the most. And there was egging, but I don't know if it was my dad or someone made it very clear that if you throw eggs at a car, it will ruin the paint job. So we never did that. And there was toilet papering. And then maybe this happened when I was in college a little bit. I discovered saran wrapping cars.
Oh, that's a good one too.
It's a very good
You see,
one.
and those are like I remember the pranks I pulled. It wasn't even much. Like a couple of TPing of trees. There was some wax crayons on driveways. And so you do
like
that.
melting them? Or
Well, you
what?
just use wax crayon on a driveway and put some kind of message on it. And
Hard to clean off.
yeah, it's hard to clean off. It takes a few days. Like you have to, like, you can't just soap and water it. And it wouldn't even be anything that offensive. Like I would just say silly things like,
You're a poo-poo head.
Happy Halloween.
I'm like you got waxed by Mr. Boffo or like something silly like that.
Wax.
You know, and it wasn't even, you
Oh
know,
my
that
gosh.
destructive, but it was a little of that, wax crayons. I don't know if we did any eggings, but I just did it a couple of times and it was just goofy. And it's like, well, no, we're not really destroying anything. So it wasn't that big of a deal. That's not quite as innocent as how a lot of it goes down. Now, if you guys, I think a lot of the people who are listening today have probably seen the movie The Crow.
Yes.
Yep.
Um,
It's a good one.
I mean, the Crow deserves an episode of its own because of what happened around there and Brendan Lee's death and the whole thing.
And when we were in college, everybody was the Crow for Halloween.
People love dressing like the Crow for
Oh,
Halloween.
I bet you did.
And great movie, but it takes place in Detroit, and the characters are murdered on Devil's Night, and then he comes back a year later. And
For revenge.
yes, because he comes back to take out the people that killed him.
Is there any other reason to come back?
Right.
Fair enough,
So,
fair
like,
enough.
if you guys have seen The Crow, then the destruction that's caused by that group who are like yelling, "Fire it up, fire it up," that is kind of the biggest, I think, media depiction of a Devil's Night kind of mischief making, where they're starting things on fire, beating people up, and murdering musicians that like to paint their faces.
So not little harmless pranks is what you're saying.
No, there was nobody got waxed by Mr. Boffo.
Nobody got waxed by Mr. Boffo. Well, actually, the villain in the Crow was Top Dollar, and in the movie, he originally set the first fire on Devil's Night, which allegedly started all the madness.
Okay, that's a good one.
Interesting.
That's a
Yeah.
good one. And so arson was a big problem. I mean, in real life, not just The Crow. Like, wasn't arson a big problem on Devil's Night?
Arson was a huge problem. Like, it started from having read up on this quite a bit, right about the same time I did in the mid-'60s. And then in 1967 were the Detroit riots, and a lot of the city burned down. And I think that was an impetus for a lot of it. So by the mid-'70s, Detroit was getting very empty. There are a lot of houses. If you have never lived in an area like that, I don't know that you can imagine it. You may have driven through it in Milwaukee.
Mm-hmm.
So burning down an abandoned house is still a big deal.
Mm-hmm.
It's a very big deal, but it's not as big of a deal because it's like nobody's losing anything, and it may have been a crack house anyway.
Okay.
But there still
Interesting.
might be people, in there. I mean, think about squatters. I've seen The Wire.
Sure.
Like, people like they live in crack houses or,
Yeah, but the population in Detroit dwindled so much that there were so many empty houses that you knew which ones were empty. You could burn them up. I don't want to say with any consequence, but with relatively little consequence.
Not worrying that you'd kill
Wow.
somebody.
That's crazy.
Mostly, yeah.
Mostly.
And unfortunately, if you did kill him, it was a squatter.
Oh my gosh.
Not that that's wrong. It's very wrong. But
Of course, of
Right,
course.
no one's defending murder, even of
That's
squatters.
crazy though.
But back to the social media thing, any decent story or movie that has to do with Detroit will mention Devil's Night.
Okay.
Everything from Grosse Point Blank does. There's a CSI episode. And a couple of my new favorite books I just discovered was The Virgin Suicides mentions it.
Oh, Jeffrey Eugenides. Yeah, all his stuff takes place in Michigan, I think.
It does. I just read him now recently, and it's so funny because he explained things to me about Detroit I thought everybody already knew.
Oh really?
Yeah.
You knew it.
Oh, I
But
did.
most people,
Yeah.
the average non-native Detroit.
Yeah, I guess you're
Percent.
not used to like a phenomenon called pink skies due to the pollution, the atmosphere being just right. At night, it doesn't get dark. It's pink.
Whoa.
Oh, that's nice.
Yeah, it was. It was pollution, but it was nice.
Sailor's Delight? No, wait. No, that's
Right.
Not there were no
Or
sailors.
cough to death.
Oh.
But even in 8 Mile, any story about Detroit will mention Devil's Night, so you got to start looking for that
Okay.
now.
That's cool. I will.
So looking at it real quick, so they talk about the arson during the Devil's Night. In 2010, I mean, it seemed that the number of fires was 169.
Which was nothing.
And that's crazy.
That's insane.
169 in an area compared to, I mean, what could it have been like before then if you had 170 fires in a decade when it supposedly went down?
Well, in 1984, which was the fine year I happened to graduate from high school,
Okay.
in a suburb of Detroit at that point, on the other side of 8 Mile.
So you didn't know Eminem?
Not personally,
Okay.
of course not. I do know where he lives now, though.
Okay.
Anyway, in 1984, there were 800 fires in Detroit.
Jeez. So, okay, I have to ask now. Did this have anything to do with your career path?
Absolutely not.
Okay.
I'm a firefighter in real life.
Yes.
My day job is a firefighter. My fun job is giving tours for the Ghost Tour
That's
here
right.
in Madison.
Yep, that's right.
But I was curious if you're growing up and being around so many fires and seeing all that destruction from, arson had
Yeah.
any kind of influence on.
We moved out of Detroit when I was little enough
Okay.
that I lived in a suburb, but it's so weird because in the news, I knew this went on all the time. So no matter what we did in the suburbs was nothing.
It was just normal. You'd
Yeah.
expect to hear about all the
And then
houses burning.
then it sort of went down. And then an interesting thing is in 1994, I was home for that birthday. I'd gone to college since then. Or no, I was actually a firefighter in Saginaw, Michigan that had their own bad Devil's Night, but I never work on my birthday. I prefer to be part of the problem that night.
That's a good way to put it.
Yeah, I always say that, I'm a firefighter and I was born on Devil's Night in Detroit, but I use my powers for good, not evil.
Hey, all right.
Good.
But anyway, no, it didn't. And I didn't understand till I moved here to Madison that not everybody celebrates Devil's Night. I knew not everybody burned everything down.
Okay, good.
But you figured there was still some kind of tomfoolery that occurs.
I was deeply disappointed when I moved here, to be honest with you. I
This
was
is boring.
I wasn't special anymore. Devil's Night, what's that?
That is crazy.
And Detroit actually came up with some kind of like a response to it in the mid 90s called Angels Night.
Wimps.
That sounds that sounds
Well,
like one of those.
But it's okay. But at the same time, it kind of, I mean, because also remember, crime in the 70s and 80s, just across the United States, was like an epidemic. Watch those movies from the 1970s. I mean, or talk about New York in the 19, like people talk, like everybody ran. They're like, I don't want to live in New York in the 19. Like now, it's like, oh, it's so beautiful, it's so great. Well,
yeah, it's very romantic now to think about living in New York, but back then it wasn't.
right.
as
Back then, you're thinking about Death
much.
Wish.
Well, then in the 1970s, when I was growing up in and outside of Detroit, I knew Detroit was the murder capital of the world. I mean, and like you talked about your mom being scared about hearing about that.
Yeah,
saint.
really. Jeez.
I mean, we had like a kidnapper in the suburbs where I lived that kidnapped people. I knew people
Oh
on
my
the news
gosh.
died all the day. And I remember talking to someone saying, oh, I never knew anything about that. And I'm like, you've got to be kidding me.
Right, a sheltered life.
Well, I think I led a sheltered life in
Yeah.
a way, but I heard about these things.
You just got
all the time.
desensitized to it probably after
Yes.
a certain amount of hearing about it.
But I mean, the 1990s went a lot of times when things turn around. I mean, they talk about Rudy Giuliani in New York and the broken windows thing, where you start taking care of the small stuff, like graffiti and broken windows on the subway and everything, and then the larger stuff. That was the kind of start taking care of the world around you, and maybe people will start taking care of it too. But also, there's a lot less of population. There's just a lot less people to commit crimes in the 90s and 2000s than there were in the 70s.
At least in the cities. But yeah, in 1994, they had an extraordinarily bad night, the worst since 1984. So in 1995, they started Angels Night, which I really applaud the effort, and I do believe it was needed. And I do remember hearing about this on the news, that they had a curfew, which they didn't have all the time.
Yeah, like 6 p.m. to 6 a.m. or something like that. So,
and they had every single firefighter working, driving around, maybe in like their own cars, every single police officer, all the city officials, and they were calling in fires on top of it. And then all the citizens were on board too, because they eventually got sick of that.
Mm-hmm, yeah, that would.
Well, like you said, I mean, in 1980, there's 800 fires.
It's like hard to even fathom.
And these are your neighbors and people you know, and
they were mostly empty houses.
But I mean, but still, it just creates a thing of terror.
Well, yeah, and like, how do they manage that? I mean, you're a firefighter. How you can't fight them all at once. It's just.
Well, and the other thing that really affects people is there's only so many of us to go around, so we're chasing all these fires, and there's a true emergency. Your resources are depleted.
Yeah, that's scary.
And that's the tragedy of a thing like that. You take something, you're like, well, we're gonna really have a trick tonight. We're gonna set a house on fire, which is, as far as pranks go, spectacular.
It's a big one.
That's a spectacular prank. Like,
not particularly clever, but
no. I mean, right. All you need is a lighter. But
a little gasoline helps too.
Right, to make it go a little faster. But I mean, it's certainly just. It's terrifying that people could worry about just places around them burning up just because people like to screw around. It's not TP.
Right. It's not a harmless prank.
And to think that the first reference to Devil's Night is when it was called Mischief Night. And we're going back to 1790. You guys remember that, right? 1790, good times. Like they wore a lot of weird clothes in 1792, like cross colors. Remember that? And skids with the bibs. Yeah, hated that stuff.
Beethoven was about 20.
He was, right, and the wigs. You know how it goes. It just was a different time. Okay. Anyway, 1790, we got a reference to Mischief Night. And a headmaster encourages a school play which ended in a, quote, an ode to fun, which praises children's tricks on Mischief Night in most approving terms. And so Mischief Night was the day before Guy Fawkes Day. Okay, so who's Guy Fawkes? Guy Fawkes and the Gunpowder Plot. Did you guys ever see V for Vendetta?
I think so. A long time ago.
Okay, well, it's about 12 years old now.
I totally saw it.
Okay. We don't really have a Guy Fawkes in the United States, but this movie, you saw people wear a certain kind of mask.
Yep, and everybody would recognize it if they saw it because it's become a very popular symbol.
Put a picture in the show notes, and that's a Guy Fawkes mask. Guy Fawkes, back in the 17th century, tried to blow up Parliament. The Gunpowder Plot. They were going underneath Parliament. They were going to blow it up, but he was caught. And everybody was saved, the king was saved and everything, and then Guy Fawkes was, of course, executed and all his friends. So to kind of remember that, in the movie they said, remember the 5th of November. That's Guy Fawkes Day, the 5th of November. Everybody wears those masks, to celebrate the fact that Guy Fawkes was...
stopped.
Yeah, it was stopped. But the day before it is when they would have the day for the kids' tricks. And so this is November 5th. In November 5th, the Guy Fawkes Day. So November 4th is the day that they'd have the tricks.
Mischief Day.
Mischief Day. And so you bring that over to the United States, and we don't have Guy Fawkes Day here. But what do we have that's within a week of Guy Fawkes Day is Halloween. So Mischief Night turns into, October 30th instead of November 4th. And it's got a couple of different names. In parts of New York State and northern New Jersey, they refer to it as Goosey Night.
Woohoo! I was gonna look out behind you.
I don't know what happens on Goosey Night, but I was gonna say October 30th is gonna be a little bit more fun this year. All right.
I hope so.
And in Niagara Falls, Ontario, they referred to it as Cabbage Night. because people would raid local gardens for leftover rotting cabbages and then hurl them about.
Oh, that's nasty.
I have rotting vegetables in my yard as we speak.
There you go.
Oh boy!
So you can have your own
Look
little,
out, everybody!
little cabbage night.
And you just do the shot put, so you can really throw it.
You can cabbage night probably all the way to Sun Prairie.
Oh, I can cabbage night with the best of them.
So it's also known as Gate Night, Mat Night, Mischievous Night, Miggy Night, Tic Tac Night, Corn Night. I don't know where Corn Night is. Trick Night, Mickey Night. And in some places in the United Kingdom, they kind of use that night. It's part of their coming of age. It's like how boys turn to men, I guess, and girls turn to women by doing pranks on that mischief night. So it's something that it's celebrated. I don't know if you celebrate. It's not really celebrating it by destroying things.
It's like a rite of passage, kind of like when teenagers go out and toilet paper and stuff because they're sneaking out of the house and they're doing something.
Yeah. Well, in high school, did you guys have a senior prank kind of thing? Like, did all the seniors get together and do a prank?
Yeah, but I don't remember what it was. Obviously, it was something very impressive.
Yeah, probably, but I couldn't partake in a couple reasons. One, I was on the track team and I couldn't get in trouble. And two, my best friend from childhood father was the assistant principal.
Oh, drat.
Oh, there you're going to go. Well, my high school class didn't have a good senior prank. It was something stupid. It was like senior walkout day or whatever. And I didn't even go because I was like, well, because I didn't take the car to school that day. So I was like, well, I'm going to have to take the bus home anyway. Like, where am I going to go?
We're going to walk.
Right. Like, I couldn't walk to the high school. The high school was 10 miles away from my house. I was like, oh, well, I'm not going to walk home. So I'm
That just blows my mind because in the tight suburban Detroit sprawl that I grew up in, I graduated with a class of 600 and a mile and a half in each direction. There was another high school that had that same population.
Wow, that's
sure.
And I walked to school like a half mile. We all walked.
Well, then senior walkout day would have been perfect for you guys.
It would have. We walked anyway.
But the best trick that happened a couple years before I graduated, the students actually assembled a car inside the school.
That's cool.
Awesome.
And that's a good trick because it's like, first of all, you got to get the guys from shop to do it. The kids from shop to do it, like the smart ones.
And you need a car.
Right. And somebody's got to give up their 73 Duster or whatever to be able to, put inside the shop.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
So anyway, but it is those rites of passage. So that when you're going through your teens and you start to rebel against the world,
lash out of it.
It's a way you can have harmless pranks, or you can start fires with squatters. And it's something that, besides the Crow and also Grosse Pointe Blank, where actually one of the characters' houses was burned down, there's been some other kind of depictions of it, and been some horror movies about it. There's a slasher film called Mischief Night, and babysitters being stalked and murdered kind of thing. That came out 2014, but it does have Malcolm McDowell. So it does have the lead character from Clockwork Orange, Malcolm McDowell.
Nice.
And so he's a great actor, but he will also act for food. So sometimes you'll see Malcolm McDowell, like just in the worst movie ever. It's like, hey, it's Malcolm McDowell. Like, I think he needed a pool. He'll just show up.
But at least he's not on any of those lawyer ads.
No, that's the thing. Like
Shatner has the
William
Monopoly
Shatner
on those.
What is he even like? Somebody must have a picture of him with a horse or something. Because why would William Shatner make that Huppy and Abraham?
And it's been on for 20 years.
It's so young.
Yeah. It's like, how did he agree to? How did he agree to letting it run that long?
Right, I think that was 3 toupees ago.
I don't even think he needed to pay. It's so old.
Yeah, it's super old. But okay, so there's the movie Mischief Night, and you can probably find that on Netflix or somewhere where they have DVDs for 99 cents. Maybe something you're looking at. Now, there's supposed to be a movie called Devil's Night that reunites Will Ferrell and John C. Reilly from Step Brothers. And you might know John C. Reilly. He was Dewey Cox in the Walk Hard, the Dewey Cox story, which is a really great rock and roll biopic parody. And,
okay.
So
wasn't he in that race car movie too? Bobby?
Yes.
Yeah.
Talladega Nights.
Nice.
The legend of Ricky Bobby, whatever. So, but Will Ferrell and John C. Reilly, there's a script called Devil's Night that the film follows two men Leonard and Gabe, who used to be best friends until a fateful October 30th destroyed their relationship. 15 years later, both men are forced to come together again on Devil's Night to save their town from supernatural forces.
Ooh, tell me it's in Detroit, please.
I hope it's in Detroit if they even... because they can probably film cheaply there, number one.
Yeah.
There is a lot of filming that happens in Detroit.
bet.
I didn't know if you knew that. That's a whole separate industry. They have been wooing the film industry so much.
I bet, because it's a good way to get money in and get,
Right, and where else can you blow stuff up? You don't even have to build the set.
No, you
Oh,
don't.
man.
Yeah, so there's always a film going in there.
And it's
yeah,
called-
I bet it is.
it's called
I bet
Devil's
it is
Night.
in Detroit.
So, yeah,
Better be.
hopefully that... I don't know. The release date is to be decided, so that may be in development hell right now. But that was fun to read about, that somebody wrote a script.
Yeah, that's cool.
And I'd love to get my hands on that script and check out that comedy horror movie. There's also... have you guys seen The Purge?
Yes.
No.
Okay. Now, The Purge is kind of the same kind of thing as a Devil's Night, but it takes place in a future America where they let people break any law they want for one night a year. So for 12 hours. And the idea,
So wouldn't you just lock yourself in your house so nobody comes and murders you?
Hopefully you can,
Yes,
but
people can,
Right.
they can break in legally.
what if you get stuck outside and your car breaks down?
yeah, and that's
no.
the idea. I think the idea of The Purge is supposed to be a social commentary based on how do you get rid of the poor people who are causing all the problems.
Okay.
You just have a night where you let everybody kill each other, and that is the basis of the movie.
Of like Hunger Games, sort of.
Well,
No?
a little bit, because it is the kind of people killing each other for the entertainment of wealthier people. So that's there, but this is kind of like it takes that Devil's Night idea and
Yeah, that's scary.
carries it to its extreme. And it was really popular a couple of years ago. I haven't seen it yet. You saw it?
I have seen it. It's kind of disturbing, of course, and it's
good.
you want to be home, you want to be locked up, but something happens to our people and they get caught outside on the worst night ever.
And there's a lot of people wearing masks and stuff, isn't there?
Of course,
Okay.
because as you all know, it's easier to hurt somebody
Oh, yeah.
if you're wearing a mask than if you're yourself or
That's-
on the computer even, perhaps.
That's. I mean, here in Madison on Halloween, everybody dresses up and goes down to State Street and parades around, and it's like it always gets out of hand. Not always, but
Not anymore.
back in the day though.
It often gets out of hand.
And the first few years that I would go down and check it out, it's like, well, yeah, because everybody's protected by the anonymity of their costume, so they're not afraid to do foolish and mean things that they might not normally do.
Well, and the suit does make the man. When you say, like, why do people dress up in uniforms when they go to work? Not number one, so they can be recognized if they're working somewhere. Like, hey, that's the Jiffy Lube person. Like, let me go get them because they got a Jiffy Lube like jumpsuit
or
on.
for safety in some.
Right, or if you're a Ghostbuster, like, so people know, that it's like, hey, they got the Ghostbuster uniform on. But the thing is, if you're in the uniform of like a butcher or something like that, or a killer, or you're like Jason from Friday the 13th,
Right.
That's why I like dressing up so much and so many different things.
because you're playing that character.
Right.
And so it's easier to become that.
Yep.
And I think that's why, a good reason why a lot of, especially why, I'm going to go back to something I just saw that Malcolm Gladwell had a video about school shootings a couple weeks ago. And he said, like, why is this, phenomenon happening where we're seeing these things happen all the time? And he compared it to the psychology of a riot. So in a riot, there's some people that will just break the window and steal a TV without needing to see anybody else to do it. There's some people that need to see one other person do it, and they'll do it. And there's some people that need to see two other people do it, and they'll do it. So it kind of that's the psychology of it is. So eventually, when somebody sees 100 other people,
domino
breaking
effect,
in,
kind of.
yeah, they're like, man, there's 100 people doing this. I might as well do it too. That kind of like school shooters. Like, they might not have ever thought of that.
Sure, the idea might not have occurred to them until they saw
Ever.
somebody else do it.
And then, like, one person does it, like, they still,
Yeah.
but 100 people do it, and they're like, this might be time for me to do it. And so I think that
interesting.
like these pranks and stuff, I mean, it's the exact same kind of thing. If you see your friend writing a wax crayon on a driveway, you're like, oh, that's funny or whatever. Like, I'd do that too. Like, my limit is to see one other person writing a wax crayon, and I'll write there too. What's my limit for breaking into someone's house and stealing their stuff?
Yeah, or lighting the house on fire.
Yeah.
Well, I think in Detroit, especially with a fire and whatever, It was expected. Clearly, after a while, it's like Devil's Night. You're going to go burn something. I do not know anyone who personally ever did that.
Yeah, but I could see that. It's kind of like the Mifflin Street block party here, where after a certain number of years of things getting out of hand, people would be like, yeah, we're going to go down and check out
what? When I was in college, where I went, it was called Mayfest, and it was the same version of that on a smaller scale.
So real quick to everybody, there was on the first Saturday in May in Madison for a long time, we had something called the Mifflin Street Block Party. And it was just right before exams. It was the last party where all the college students would just go off and get crazy. And please continue with Mayfest.
Oh, yeah. So when I was in college, that whole riot thing, I remember, I've been called a goody three shoes because two just didn't cut it. But and I was there at this little street party they had that was equivalent to that. And I remember sort of getting caught up in little riotous behavior that didn't involve anything destructive. And I remember thinking, why am I doing this? I would never do this.
Yeah.
But everybody else is.
Like you got swept up in the wave of...
It's exactly what happened. And it involved, I don't know if I was throwing stuff, but I remember a police officer being there, and I've always been very respectful for that. And then I remember at that point, I'm like, run.
Right. Well, I mean, and that's the thing that when we talk about the Mifflin Street Block Party. So in 1996, the Mifflin Street Block Party in Madison turned violent. Like they overturned a police car, set it on fire. People were throwing beer bottles
at the firefighters and stuff like that.
I was working that night.
Were you really?
It really sucked.
It did really suck.
It did.
It was something. And now we had performed there during the day. And then we went to perform at a different club in the nighttime. But so we'd carried all of our equipment early in the day, like 2 or 3 o'clock to the club. And then later on, people were like, oh my God, you got to see what's happening on Mifflin Street. Like, it's going crazy. They're burning it down.
Yeah, it was awful.
The weird thing about that is usually everybody loves firefighters, right? Everybody loves
of course.
They didn't love us in those mentalities sometimes.
And
like,
it's so scary.
We needed protection.
Yeah.
Or like throwing... I remember the nicest guy I worked with, Bill. He was trying to put out a car fire, and people are throwing stuff at him, and he's just a sweetheart. He's like, I'm trying to help you guys out
Protect
here.
you.
Bam, bam, more stuff.
Yeah, that disgusted me because I was there and I saw people behaving that way, and I'm like, what are you doing? Like, they're here to help us out. I mean,
and these also aren't, and the people that are participating in these riots, and people have a generic idea of who participates in a riot, right? No, these are straight up college students. These are your future leaders of America.
Right.
That's the thing when they were talking about so Halloween on State Street in Madison here. State Street is our main drag right outside of the state capitol. And for a while, like MTV was coming here to shoot on Halloween. And we had like one of the biggest Halloween celebrations in the country. Like 100,000 people would just come on, and they'd come on to State Street. Everybody would dress up. But then things started to get out of hand. I always told people that if you really want to rob a bank in any of the outlying suburbs of Madison, that would be the night to do it, because they took police and law enforcement.
Yeah, they had to.
They pulled them in from all the surrounding counties. So, I mean, I expected them to declare, like, for the National Guard to come in at some point.
They were available.
Okay.
I can tell you that, but I always, in the very early evening, I'd go out to there just because it's Halloween and I couldn't resist.
It's fun. Yeah, it's cool to see all the costumes.
And some of them were great. And then I remember it got really bad that one year. And then they made it the Freak Fest where you have to actually buy attendance. So I never work Halloween, but they offered me an overtime to work on the street that night. And I'm like, I'm down with that.
That could be fun.
It was. So I'm working there. I'm standing on the street looking at all the things, and there are cops every 10 feet. And people are always fabulously hosting us. Like they have places where you can get cookies or food.
That's nice.
There was one empty store on State Street that was considerably large, but it was all papered up in the window. And they're like, you can get coffee and stuff in there. So I walked in there with my partner, and I'm not kidding you. There were 200 cops, I counted.
Oh my God.
Right.
Waiting. And there were cops every 5 feet outside that night, and I know the National Guard was available.
It was a serious thing.
That makes me feel better though, because I was there the year when it got really bad, and I saw the line of riot police with pepper, like the spray coming in, and I was like, time to go.
Gotta go. Well, and there's actually funny. I think I have this on the old Sunspot blog somewhere. So like October 31st of 2005, out there, and I was on State Street at the very end of the night, and just these lights turn on. Like the vehicles come out and they're just coming down the street and they're just, you get out of here. Sweep.
Yeah.
It was like a sweep.
It was.
Like a human sweep of getting people out of State Street. I had never seen anything like it. Like it's ride control.
Sure, it's crowd control. It's amazing because I have those lights set up, and I have the headquarters for that whole operation is in the fire department. So I've been in there that night before. So they're turning on the lights. Everybody's like cockroaches. And then what they do now is they come through with the leaf blowers, the loudest leaf blowers man can buy.
I
And
didn't
then
realize that.
Yeah, and then the first year after it was a problem at a specific bar, they had all the horses out.
Yeah, I remember seeing those.
Well,
too.
they had the horses poop in front of that
No way.
specific car intentionally. So there was a ton of poop in front of that bar.
Oh, wow.
So, right. So,
It was crowd control at its finest.
That's
well, and the thing is, things also got better. I mean, now they have it's a very, like, nobody gets in trouble. There's, I mean, it's not 100,000 people, but it's also nobody's getting hurt.
Yeah.
No businesses are being destroyed.
Businesses lost a lot of money.
Yeah.
And another interesting thing about coming in on State Street, and I know this statistically, a friend of mine was flying back from New York, sitting next to a guy who was coming to Madison with no connection because it was such a wild party on Halloween. And then I also
right.
know from our paramedics the bad year, everybody they transported to the hospital that got pepper sprayed, hurt, drunk, or in a fight was from Minnesota. Out of
Well,
like 20 people.
Oh,
What do you
man.
what do you expect from Vikings
Oh, but they're so nice.
They
I
are-
thought about what about
yeah.
Minnesota nice?
They're not.
fans? Minnesota angry when drunk. It's a new thing.
Oh my gosh, that's funny.
But they were all from out of state. I mean,
Oh,
like the
yeah.
overwhelming majority was from out of state.
Well, and that goes back to when we talk about Devil's Night, we talk
Yeah.
about the riot thing, and we talk about the way you're dressed. You're dressed like a demon or a ghoul or something like that. You're not at home. It's not a place that you know. And you see other people messing. Like what? I think your number of people you need to see to break a window or to throw a rock or a bottle goes significantly down the further and further you are away from home.
I agree.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And totally. And so when we look back, now this isn't, we talk about Devil's Night, and really a lot of the United States, Devil's Night comes from the 1930s. But this is a tradition that goes back, let's go back to...
Irish immigrants.
Yeah, well, even further than that, let's go to Europe, because we were talking about, you talk about Mayfest, a riot, Mifflin Street Block Party in May was a riot. So the night of April 30th in Germany is called Walpurgisnacht. Okay, and that's the eve of the...
Gesundheit.
Yeah, right? Walpurgisnacht. I feel like I'm in a World War II movie just saying it. But it's on the eve of the feast day of Saint Walpurga. We were talking about saints earlier. She was an 8th century abbess in Germania. They set up this night for her on April 30th. And the thing is that in Germanic folklore before then, it was actually called Hexennacht, which is Witches' Night.
Ooh.
And Witches' Night was about the night that the witches were supposed to meet in the Harz Mountains between the rivers Weser and Elbe. And they take a pagan ritual and then they Christianize it by saying, okay, now we're going to make this a party for the feast of the of
Some
Walpurga.
saint.
Right. And so that was the day that over the centuries Witches' Night has been the day that people were causing trouble and tricks. And that happens in the Czech Republic, Estonia, Finland, Germany, obviously, Sweden, even the Nordic countries that are usually so well behaved, aren't they? And the Netherlands, well, you expect that in the Netherlands. They're all high. Just kidding. Colorado's the same. Anyway, no, we're just screwing around. But the idea is that they have these kind of nights in Europe, and it's been a tradition that happens like in the springtime. Instead of here, it happens in the fall.
Interesting.
Well, if you look at the witches' calendar, the Wiccan calendar, they have these cross sections that are related. So it's usually just about the opposite of Samhain or Halloween is May Day.
Oh,
You know, isn't it like about 6 months later?
Yeah.
yeah, no, I can see that. Right, so it would be.
Yeah,
okay.
totally.
There
Makes
you go.
sense.
They're connected, and it all goes back to Celtic time and before the Christians made everything Christian, and then the Catholics decided to make it even more Christian or Catholic.
Right.
Yeah, so it's related.
It is. It is. All right. Well, that's a little bit on Devil's Night. Lisa, thank you for joining us today.
It's been a pleasure. Thanks for having
Lisa.
me.
And we're going to celebrate Devil's Night and your birthday.
Yes.
And we're going to celebrate the 1-year anniversary of See You on the Other Side podcast the day after that.
Yep.
So we've got a big, fun, crazy weekend
big weekend
ahead. I'm looking forward to it. And we'll have to make sure we get lots of pictures of everybody in their costumes.
Yes,
And
that sounds like fun.
we won't take pictures of the rioting, though, because,
There won't be
it'd be
any.
incriminating. No, just kidding. No, there won't be any.
There's gonna be a riot on the dance floor, and that's
All right. Well, thanks again, Lisa.
Thank you very much.
A lot of the conversation today centered around the mentality of the riot. So the more you see of some kind of behavior that normally you'd think be unacceptable, like breaking windows and stealing TVs or setting police cars on fire or hurting people, the more you see other people do that in front of you, the more likely you are for your resistance to break down and do it yourself. And that's the topic that we wrestle with in this week's song. When you're constantly bombarded by images of violence and depravity and just in general humans being horrible to each other, what kind of effect is that going to have on your psyche? And what kind of effect is that going to have on the civilization that we have created for each other in modern humanity and society? That's what we explore with this week's track, Neanderthal.
With no regrets, like raping a hooker or popping a cop, like pushing a handy right out of his wheelchair. Your thoughts become reality, focusing on the tragedy.
Thank you for listening to today's episode. You can find us online at OthersidePodcast.com. Until next time, see you on the other side.
Mischief Day. Whee!
If you touch Michael Jackson's wax figure, you can dance.
Yes.
No.
Okay. You got waxed by Mr. Boffo.